Good afternoon. Today's lecture is devoted to the evaluation of motivational strategies in the educational process. This topic is of particular significance because motivation determines not only the intensity of student effort, but also the quality, stability, and direction of learning activity. Pedagogical practice shows that even well-designed instruction loses effectiveness when students do not see value in the task, do not believe in the possibility of success, or do not experience personal involvement in learning. For that reason, the study of motivation belongs to the central concerns of educational analysis. The lecture is organized around three principal aims. First, it is necessary to examine the main motivational theories and their significance for the contemporary educational process. Second, attention must be given to practical methods through which the effectiveness of motivational strategies may be evaluated in real classrooms. Third, it is important to develop the ability to adapt such strategies to students who differ in needs, background, and educational context. Taken together, these aims indicate that motivation should be treated not as an abstract psychological concept, but as a practical pedagogical variable requiring analysis, evaluation, and deliberate management. Motivation may be defined as the driving force that directs an individual toward purposeful action. In educational settings, it is the factor that influences whether a student merely attends instruction or becomes genuinely engaged in learning. Its importance lies in the fact that motivation affects both participation and persistence. A motivated learner is more likely to invest effort, respond to challenge, and sustain attention over time. Consequently, the teacher's work involves not only the transmission of knowledge, but also the creation of conditions in which motivation can be supported and strengthened. This slide distinguishes between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is connected with external rewards or consequences such as grades, praise, approval, or avoidance of negative outcomes. Intrinsic motivation, by contrast, arises from genuine interest, intellectual curiosity, and the satisfaction found in the learning process itself. The distinction is pedagogically significant because these forms of motivation do not produce identical educational effects. External incentives may stimulate short-term compliance, whereas intrinsic motivation is more closely associated with deeper engagement, independent effort, and sustained interest in the subject. The practical example presented here illustrates the difference between the two motivational types. One student studies English in order to obtain a good grade, another studies because of genuine interest in the language and culture. In both cases, learning takes place, yet the depth of involvement and the durability of educational outcomes are not necessarily the same. This comparison is important because it reminds us that the same visible behavior may be supported by very different inner motives. A teacher who seeks lasting results must therefore attend not only to performance but also to the motivational basis on which that performance. Several factors are identified here as especially influential in shaping student motivation. These include subject interest, teacher support, clarity of goals, and the student's orientation toward personal growth. Each of these elements contributes to the learner's willingness to participate meaningfully in the educational process. The pedagogical implication is clear. Motivation is not fixed in advance, nor is it solely a matter of personality. It is affected by how relevant the material appears, how clearly expectations are defined, how consistently support is provided, and whether the student experiences learning as a form of development rather than as mere obligation. At this stage, the lecture turns to the principal theoretical frameworks through which student motivation may be understood. Such theories are important because they offer explanatory models for behavior that may otherwise appear inconsistent or difficult to interpret. Theory, in this context, does not replace practical judgment. Rather, it sharpens it. By examining motivational behavior through established frameworks, the teacher gains a more precise basis for choosing pedagogical strategies and for evaluating why a given approach succeeds or fails. Maslow's theory proceeds from the idea that human needs are arranged in a hierarchy, and that higher forms of development become possible only when more basic conditions are sufficiently secured. Within school life, this means that a student who feels unsafe, unsupported, or physically uncomfortable is unlikely to demonstrate strong academic motivation. The educational significance of this theory lies in its reminder that learning is not isolated from broader human conditions. Instruction becomes effective only where the learner's basic sense of security and stability has not been compromised. Vroom's expectancy theory explains motivation through the relationship between effort, expected success, and the value of the anticipated result. Students are more likely to invest effort when they believe that their work can realistically lead to achievement, and when that achievement is itself meaningful to them. This perspective is highly relevant to pedagogy. It suggests that motivation weakens when tasks seem unattainable or when success appears irrelevant. The teacher must therefore ensure both clarity of pathway and significance of outcome. Self-determination theory, associated with Deci and Ryan, identifies 3 psychological conditions essential to strong and durable motivation: autonomy, competence, and social connection. Students need to experience a degree of control over their learning, confidence in their ability to succeed, and a sense of belonging within the educational environment. This theory is pedagogically valuable because it links motivation with the structure of classroom life itself. Where autonomy is suppressed, competence undermined, or social belonging weakened, motivation is likely to decline. The case study demonstrates how theoretical approaches may guide practical decisions. A student with low confidence may respond best when effort is linked visibly to attainable success, which reflects Vroom's theory. A student who already shows strong interest may benefit more from freedom of choice and independent project work, which corresponds to self-determination theory. The broader methodological point is that motivational strategy should never be applied mechanically. Its effectiveness depends on the learner's actual condition, prior disposition, and educational context. The lecture now shifts from theory to evaluation. If motivation is to be supported professionally, it must first be assessed with care. Teachers need methods that make it possible to identify not only visible participation, but also the factors that shape engagement, resistance, persistence, and withdrawal. Evaluation, therefore, is not an external addition to motivational work. It is the condition for adapting strategy to real classroom needs, rather than relying on assumption. Surveys and questionnaires provide direct access to students' perceptions of learning, their interests, and the factors that influence their willingness to engage. Their value lies in the fact that they make visible aspects of motivation that are not always evident through observation alone. When interpreted thoughtfully, such responses allow the teacher to adjust syllabus design, task selection, and classroom emphasis in ways more closely aligned with the actual motivational climate of the group. Observation offers a different but equally important form of evidence. It allows the teacher to examine participation in real classroom conditions: who volunteers, who hesitates, who withdraws, and who shows signs of sustained or declining engagement. Its particular strength lies in situational insight. Motivation is often revealed not in declared opinion, but in reaction to challenge, repetition, novelty, or difficulty. Observation, therefore, provides an indispensable complement to self-report methods. Student self-assessment introduces a reflective dimension into motivational evaluation. By asking learners to consider their own emotional state, level of involvement, and response to particular tasks, the teacher encourages the development of metacognitive awareness. This method is significant not only because it yields information, but because it teaches students to recognize the factors affecting their own performance. In this way, self-assessment becomes both evaluative and developmental. The summary on this slide brings together 3 essential lines of the lecture. First, the distinction between motivational types is directly linked to engagement and success, which is why intrinsic interest deserves particular pedagogical attention. Second, motivational theories help explain the underlying drivers of student behavior and therefore support more differentiated teaching. Third, evaluation methods, especially surveys and observation, make it possible to adapt strategy rather than rely on general assumptions. This synthesis is important because it connects concept, diagnosis, and pedagogical response into one coherent framework. The final statement expresses the central conclusion of the lecture: understanding motivational theories and adapting them to specific situations contributes to a more productive and intellectually encouraging educational atmosphere. Motivation is not a secondary feature of teaching. It is one of the conditions under which learning becomes active, sustained, and meaningful. Thank you for your attention.